If you consider yourself to be a bit of a tone searcher, someone who likes to use pedals beyond the norm, use them as production tools, or generally just likes to break the rules a little bit when it comes to pedals and tone, then this pedal right here is going to be a must-buy for you guys. So this is the Great Eastern Effects XO variable crossover. Now some of you out there will already know what a crossover is and you'll already understand the use of this pedal. A crossover is something that's been around for quite a while in production, but also hi-fis and PAs, and some of you bass players and synth players might already have come across something like this before. But I didn't know what it was, so I think it's probably a little alien to us guitar players, but definitely hasn't been as readily available to anyone as this makes it. A crossover, more specifically, is a crossover of two filters, a high pass and a low pass filter that meet at a certain point, the crossover point. So the XO is a variable crossover and dual band effects loop. The XO allows you to place different effects on your higher and lower frequencies. Let me say that again. The XO allows you to place different effects on your high and low frequencies. When I was first pitched that idea by David Greaves at Great Eastern Effects, I was kind of in a bit of a stunned silence for like 30 seconds. The idea of parallel effects isn't necessarily new to me, but being able to affect your low frequencies and your high frequencies differently completely opened my mind to a new world of possibilities. Okay, so I do want to get into some tones quite quickly because that's the best way that we're all going to understand this pedal. And the first thing that came to my mind when I heard about it was stacking drive tones together, stacking fuzzes with drives, drives with your clean blend and different drives together, affecting your low and high frequencies differently. So that's what we're going to experiment a little bit with first. I have a little bit of a board put together to demonstrate this. As you can see, we have the XO in the middle of the board, and then all of the pedals to the left of the board, so the Deep Oggin, Fallout Cloud, and the Atmosphere, are all in one loop, the left loop of the XO, so that's all affecting the low end of my signal. And then the pedals on the right side of the XO are the same, but they're in the right loop, so they're all affecting the high end. So the Delay Llama, the Super Rodent, and the Mythos Argo. We can swap that round, we'll get onto that later. Also, we're going to keep the XO kind of relatively simple for now. I'm not going to mess with too many of the switches, but you might see me messing with the crossover frequency knob, which is the main big knob on there. It's the most complicated part about this pedal, but once you get a head around it, everything else falls into place. And essentially the crossover frequency knob moves where that crossover point is in the frequency spectrum. So it moves that center point where the two filters meet. So as you turn that crossover knob down, you're moving the crossover point down. I haven't explained that super well, but essentially it kind of works backwards to what you would expect. But once you get your head around that, the rest of the pedal falls into place. Let's put on the Super Rodent, which is just going to be affecting the upper frequencies. So you can hear that the low end is still clean. It's kind of a little harder to hear. Going to be much more obvious for you bass players. This is kind of how the secret sauce for bass players is having an overdrive pedal on your upper end but keeping your low end clean. So let's do the same, but let's put the Fallout Cloud affecting the low end, and you'll hear that the high end stays clean. Cool. Neither of them are sounds that I would use personally. Where things get exciting is when you start combining. So I'm now going to put the Super Rodent on the high end. So we're sort of getting that fuzzy, big muffy sound affecting our lower frequencies, but getting a more crisper distortion sound affecting the upper frequencies. Really cool. So let's have a play with that crossover knob, just so you can start to actually hear what it's doing rather than me explaining it badly. So turning it down, we're going to hear more of the Super Rodent as it affects more of the signal. turning it up, we're going to hit more of the fallout cloud, affecting more of the signal. Pretty cool, right? And you know, this is just one example. These are just two pedals. Any pedal in these loops, any drive, any fuzz, whatever you want, are going to create a completely new drive sound that's never been heard before. At this point, I will show you one more cool new trick that this pedal can do just with a flick of a switch, and that is switch the loops round, switch the sends round. And that's just the send flip switch. Feature just to quickly switching around the effects. Let's stack the Mythos Argo into the Super Rodent, affecting the lower frequencies only, but we've still got the fallout cloud affecting the higher frequencies. Let's swap that round. So if, like me, the first thing you're going to do with a pedal like this is create and blend different drive and fuzz pedals together. And that's what we just did. I think there's a whole plethora of options out there. We're only really scratching the surface in this video, but it doesn't stop there. Along with the basic functions of this pedal, there are a lot of kind of utility features and ease of live quality of life functions that make this pedal so much more useful than that, and also tailor it to whatever scenario you want to use it in, whether you're a guitar player, a bass player, or anything else pretty much. So I've explained briefly what the crossover frequency knob is, but the range switch kind of shifts the range that frequency knob adjusts from a more guitar friendly frequency range to a more bass friendly frequency range. For this demo, I'm mainly going to keep it on the guitar friendly range because that's what I am. I am a guitar player, but you bass players, synth players, anything else will probably want to mess around with that range switch just to favour the low end a little bit more. The return balance knob, this little knob down here, allows you to mix between the two sides, so either turning up your lows or highs and balancing between them, getting the desired volume of each. We have a phase switch for inverting the phase. Sometimes when you're combining bigger digital pedals, they can also flip the phase, so having that is really useful. Also comes into play when you're using different outputs, but we'll get onto that in a second. And then we have the send flip switch, which I did touch on earlier, but basically that flips the sends left and right. So what was affecting the high end is now affecting the low end, and vice versa. Really useful switch. That's probably my favorite one. Finally, at the bottom here, we have a dry blend control, which is going to be absolutely essential for not only you bass players, but I really like it to create new modulation effects. Say I have a really heavy vibrato affecting my low end, but I want to just bring in a bit more of my clean signal. You create this kind of low focused chorus tone. Really cool. All these little features and controls allow you to do so much more than just blending different drive pedals together. There's a whole new world out there of crossover ambient tones that are just waiting for you to explore. So I described this pedal to David Greaves at Great Eastern Effects as a bit of a utility pedal, kind of his first utility pedal. And Dave wasn't that happy with that. He was like, no, it's not a utility pedal. It's much more sexy than that. Firstly, Dave, no pedal is sexy. This is just kind of weird. And secondly, I do also get what he's saying. This pedal is a bit more exciting than your run-of-the-mill signal blender, output splitter, anything like that. But it also does have some of those kind of unsexy but incredibly useful scenarios that you can use this pedal in that make more use of all the different ins and outs of this pedal. You can use this pedal as a basic high-pass or low-pass filter. It's a very powerful filter in its own right, and you have individual control of the high and low pass filters. Also, if you don't plug anything into the loops, you can just turn this into a really powerful tilt EQ using the return balance. Not to mention that this also just has a great buffer inside. It's a great buffer, a great line driver when engaged. You can use this as a signal mixer, so you can mix between two different inputs. I don't know what you'd use this for, maybe not two guitars, but maybe you're a guitar player who plays with a drum machine. You could plug your guitar into one return and the drum machine into the other return, and then you can blend between them, and vice versa. You can use this as a signal splitter. Send your signal out to two different outputs. But the cool thing about that is you'll be sending your high frequencies to one output and your low frequencies to another output. So say you're a baritone player, for example, you want to send your high frequencies or your higher frequencies to a traditional guitar amplifier, but you want to send the low end to a bass amp, you're going to fill up so much more air with that. There is a way that you can also send this to three outputs. Turn your dry blend all the way up and also use the main output to send a full frequency signal to a third amplifier, as well as your high and low to two separate amps. It's pretty incredible what you can do with this pedal, and I'm sure there are a ton more uses as well if you just use your imagination and experiment with all the different things going on here. self-explanatory why I think this pedal is a must-buy for some people. Even if you're not one of those people, I think it's a good way to experiment and create new tones that have never been heard before. For bass players, I think you already know that this is an absolute game changer, or at least an easier way to use guitar pedals without losing all that low end. For guitar players, like I said, it unlocks a whole new world of tone searching and experimentation that just hasn't been available to us before. A new direction for Great Eastern effects, you know, away from the typical drives and fuzzers. Quite a departure, but this is an absolute home run.